Welcome today to the Culture Chat, where culture and conversation connect. We have our guest, Andrea Lucky, joining us. Andrea is the CEO and founder of Fern HR Consulting LLC, a provider of superior HR expertise for small to mid-sized organizations in a variety of industries. Andrea is a seasoned HR executive with a wealth of experience in transforming HR teams and developing strategic HR solutions that align with organizational objectives. Known for her ability to elevate HR functions to be more strategic and valued within organizations, Andrea has a proven track record of driving impactful change. Beginning her career in HR as a compensation analyst and quickly moving her way to leading HR organizations. She holds the distinction of being the first female promoted to an executive role at a Japanese manufacturing company. With a career spanning more than 30 years, I am so excited that Andrea, a culture champion and cultivator of exceptional employee engagement, has joined us here today on the Culture Chat to have a deep dive conversation into all things people and culture. So thank you, Andrea. Would you like to share a little bit more about your experience and background that we don't have from the bio, some insight into your career or personal background that you'd like to share?
Oh, sure. Career-wise, let's say I started as a compensation and benefits, and more because of an love of analytical things. That's kind of what got me into HR. So I started there and then just branched out from there. So I do kind of have that passion still of doing compensation work. In particular, on a personal note, I've been married for 30 plus years, have a daughter who's studying architecture in New York, so it's hard to have her so far away from home, but she is loving it out there. And gardening, love murder podcasts.
Ooh, all right.
True crime podcast, yeah.
I'm going to hop in on this one. Okay, so we're both from the Pacific Northwest. We both love gardening.
Yeah.
We both enjoy true crime. Let's see.
Well,
we're a clone.
Actually, apparently. All three of us are from the Pacific Northwest.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I was born in Oregon. But you are up in Washington, right? Yeah.
Yes.
So I wasn't quite as north.
It's okay.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Andrea, let's just dive in, shall we? Let's talk all things HR. So we are in such a churning market right now for those who are listening that are job seekers, who may be hiring managers, who may be staying within organizations that are going through a lot of change on every level. How in your experience, long-term or recent, how in your experience do you see that attrition, that churn to play out in terms of culture within the organization or total rewards?
Yeah, that's such a good point, because I guess there is that saying that change is the only constant. There is so much change going on. It's hard to keep up with it at times. People are looking for different things nowadays. So you've got to really try to bring in what is going to attract those people and keep them as long as possible, but knowing that they will not stay. You're not gone are the 20-year careers in the same location. So you do need to provide a culture that is going to be attractive to the people that will help build your business, what you are looking for in your culture. Those are the people who are going to stay the longest, who are going to help you achieve your goals and to continue to build that culture. Mm-hmm. So the change is, it is, you just need to embrace the change, and you need to find the things that will attract the employees that you want to get through this constant evolution.
Mm-hmm. And so from that compensation background, from the total rewards, how does that play into, because let me speak personally, I changed roles quite a lot through my early career. And that was change, of course. but with it also came increased earning power.
Correct.
And so we have this kind of conundrum happening now where we have a saturated talent market. We have organizations that are making choices and going through change of their talent because they're trying to have cost efficiencies, they're trying to streamline. And yet people are looking for key salary increases, right? If they're impacted, they're going to say, how can I make my next jump? If they are left within an organization and they're being asked to fill the role of 2 or 3 people, they're asking themselves, will there be a reward at the end of this path? How does that compensation piece play into the talent and the attrition we're seeing?
Yes. There's a lot to that question. A simple answer would be, what I like to say is you need to remove compensation from the table as an issue. So if you're paying a competitive wage, most people are going to be looking for other things. Not always is pay, and you've heard this before, pay is not usually the number one reason why people leave an organization. It's their boss, usually. So as long as you're paid fairly, I mean, if you're not paid competitively, then that will be the number one reason why people are leaving your organization. So make sure that you are paying a competitive wage for your market. The people that you are attracting to your organization and who you're competing for talent, make sure that you are competitive. Then everything else comes into the culture and the employee engagement experience. So it's a difficult question to answer because there's so much that goes into it. The other piece, though, with compensation comes opportunity and employee development. And that is a critical piece that I think a lot of companies may forget, or training and development, learning. Development is often one of the first things, departments, headcounts that get cut in difficult times. So if you're not able to develop your employees internally, where are they going to go? They're not going to stay and hope that someday they move up. They are going to look for that other opportunity elsewhere if they are not getting it with you. So you do need to provide that development, opportunities for development, career development. And that can look very different. It doesn't have to be just promotions with money. It could be giving opportunities for experience development, taking on another project that is setting them up for a future position. So there's lots of different ways. That's a whole other topic, but there are lots of different ways that you can develop employees. It's not just promotions and giving more money.
So I love, if we step back and we look at the 20,000 foot view you're talking about, we're really talking about HR strategy, because you have compensation, which is a hot topic and always pressing, especially when you have organizations that maybe make changes within their org to bring in cost efficiency, bring in new talent that they, like a whole releveling of the market almost feels like it's happening, at least down here in the tech space, because salaries have changed significantly depending on which organizations you're looking at, which companies you're looking at. But what you're talking about is stepping back and saying, hey, here's our strategy. So compensation, we're going to be competitive. So we're going to level and make sure that's the case. But we can offer stretch projects to help our internal employees grow, and we can offer a fantastic employee experience that will fit the needs of our target talent so that they come to us beyond just compensation, but also because we offer an environment they want to be in. So that HR strategy is like really big picture thinking. So how do you know if your HR strategy is aligned and lining up in a way that supports the business strategy?
Well, first of all, it's important that HR people, professionals, understand what the organizational strategy is. A lot of times that's it seems kind of obvious, but oftentimes it's not well known, and things can be done in a vacuum, then therefore don't align. And if it's at odds, it's never going to work. So you need to make sure that you're understanding the company's organizational philosophy and strategy. You'll want to, when you're designing your HR strategy, you want to take a look at what the organization is wanting to do, what is important to the organization, so that the programs that you are putting into place support that. So if you're, let's say an organization is in a growth period, and you're going to be needing to expand people, what are you looking for in the people that you are bringing on board? What is important for those people to have that is going to help support the organization's goals of growth? That's another kind of 20,000 level. But when you're developing that strategy, you need to understand we are in a growth period, or we are going to be doing some M&A work and how we're growing our company, or we are looking to get engaged employees. So what do engaged employees look like, and how can we bring on more of those employees to help build that culture in the organization? If you're talking about supporting pay, you're not going to be able to compete with every single company out there. You just can't. So up here in the Seattle area, can't compete with an Amazon, a Microsoft. What is it that you would bring to the table to attract those employees to your organization? So you're paying competitively for the positions. It may not be as much money as somebody would get going to a Microsoft, for example, but maybe they don't want to be a number. Maybe they want that experience. Maybe they want the development. Maybe they want a family environment. So you need to figure out what your brand is, what you're offering, and really sell that, and then develop that strategy to support that.
So if I were the army of one HR professional in my organization, what would I look for as a mile marker to determine if maybe my culture is not, right? My engagement is not as strong as I might hope.
Yes. One of the data is important, and you can find really good data that impacts culture in a variety of places. One obvious one is retention or turnover. So you can pull your turnover data. If you're doing exit interviews, you can find out more information, not just the numbers of how many people are leaving, but the why. Why are people leaving? Now, you have to take that a bit with a grain of salt, because people don't want to burn bridges, so they may not be really honest about the reason why they're leaving. But if you're starting to see a pattern, you can try and attack that and come up with some solutions to help change that. So that is one. Employee surveys is another. So if you're asking the right questions in your employee engagement surveys, you're able to see and get a really good picture of what your employees are thinking, how they feel, and how to make things better. Really important though, if you're going to do a survey, you have got to take action. The worst thing you can do is do a survey and do nothing with it. Looking at that information, you can look at your employee relations data too. If you're getting a lot of complaints about a certain manager or certain employee in an area, there's an issue in that area. So data is really important. And those are some big ones that you can bring to the executive team to show what the issue is and come up with a solution to help solve that issue.
So let's flip the coin. I mean, this is all the great energy that HR can put in, align with the business strategy. I feel like it's a reoccurring theme of the HR professionals that are coming onto the culture chat, which is talking about getting deeper into that partnership within the business and understanding the business needs, the business vision, the business goals, and kind of leaning into that part of the conversation, which I feel HR for many decades sat a little bit on the outskirts of those conversations.
Yes.
So we know what we're supposed to do, but we also know that as HR professionals, we can end up in environments where it's just beyond. We don't even need to describe beyond what, like it's just beyond. And, words that come to mind are toxicity, right? Maybe poor leadership. Sometimes there's coaching opportunities because it's really new leadership, which is different. Sometimes it's truly tolerated behaviors in poor leadership that lead to toxic environments. When I identify that as a single HR or a small team of HR, what do I do in that scenario? I want to show up support. I want to be a part of the business decisions. I want to be aligning my people strategies, my brand, my culture to something that attracts that top talent and can adequately compete against companies like Amazon and the such, right? So what do I do when I'm stuck in a whirlwind of beyond?
That's a $1 million question right there. I think that one of the things that you need to evaluate is whether or not the senior leadership, CEO, what is it that they want? Do they want change? What I found in a few places that I've worked with is that oftentimes they will say that they want, whether it's using buzzwords or they're wanting to check off a box, that, we have a great culture. We need to do culture work because that's the important thing to do. When the rubber meets the road and they need to make the hard decisions to support what they're saying they want, oftentimes I find that they aren't willing to do that. And that right there is your culture. Your culture is the worst you're willing to tolerate. So if you have a toxic environment and those people who are toxic are allowed to be toxic, you're going to have a toxic environment. That's not going to change. If you're really wanting to change though, so let's assume the best here. Let's assume that you're really wanting to change. You need to clearly, first of all, you need to clearly communicate what your values are in this area and be very transparent about that. You need to take action against people who are not towing the line. You need to set really clear policies for people to follow and hold people accountable to that. You will begin to see, if you do that, you will begin to see a change. But it takes time. Changing a culture takes time. You can't expect immediate improvement, or not necessarily improvement. You could see some immediate improvement, but you're not going to be able to change a culture in a month, a year. It can take 8 years, 10 years, but you need to be consistent with what you're doing. Toxic employers, and people can see the data on this. This is nothing new. It's out. You can Google it. Productivity declines. Mm-hmm. People, if you're not happy, you're not going to be putting your best self forward. You're not going to be doing your best work. If you have employees who are customer facing, they aren't going to be treating your customers right. They aren't happy to be there. They're just getting by. They're surviving. They aren't thriving. They're surviving. Maybe just looking and killing time until their next opportunity comes along. And it causes a lot of damage, like I was saying, with productivity, with employee morale, mental health. That's a big hot topic nowadays too, mental health. All of this can wreak havoc on your employees and your organization. So if that's something that is really important to you as an organization, as a CEO, as leader, you need to do what you say you're going to do. Walk the talk, take action. If you're an HR person, working in an organization that isn't supportive of that and it's important to you, unfortunately, you may need to look for another place because it's not going to change.
So let's talk about a term you used when we had originally spoken called protected rainmakers. I love that.
Yes, protected rainmakers.
So I think this is really powerful because certain functions have more stretch, more leeway, and how does that play into the business component and the HR partnership in your world? Why don't you first start by explaining what you say protected rainmakers are?
Okay, so a lot of organizations with their employees who are the ones bringing in the money, right? They're the operational folks, the salespeople, the people who are making the rain versus the administrative functions like us HR folks. There are organizations out there that can find those folks. They tolerate the poor behavior from those people because they are the ones who are bringing in the money. So you'll often hear the supervisor of that person say, yeah, they're a jerk, but man, they bring in a lot of business.
Yeah.
How much better could it be if everyone was happy, working in that environment, doing their best, if that person wasn't treating them in that way, then that one person is bringing in? That's the question. And like I said, you can see data that productivity improves when people are engaged. So if you don't tolerate that rainmaker's behavior, you're going to be improving overall productivity. It will be better. But a lot of people are, I don't want to say they're blinded by it. They're just, maybe they're afraid. They're afraid to make that change, do something with that person who's bringing in all this money because they're afraid that they will lose that business. When in reality, and studies show this, that it will be better.
I think part of it too, because I'm seeing this from other industries, is instead of just pressure from the top internally, like your own organization, you have your board that is pressuring to meet those numbers and those sales goals. So then you're at a point where you're fighting. Do we want a positive culture? Do I need to meet my numbers? But I have to meet my numbers in order to maintain a job, in order to drive a culture. So it's like it's never ending cycle. So
yes, that's a great point. And that's where I think the CEO and the CPO or CHRO are going to play such an important role. Is they're going to need to speak with the board to show them, again with data, but to show them that by doing this, it will be better. You might see a little dip right away. Obviously, if you lose that person, there's going to be that dip initially, but it will get better. And the CEO and the HR counterpart can talk with the board to explain why they're doing what they're doing, why it's important, what they're trying to accomplish with that, so that the board is supportive of those tough decisions that, yes, I did have to let go this rainmaker, but here's why. And if they're aware in the beginning, communication again is key, but if they're aware in the beginning, they would support that.
And don't you feel like a lot of that is tied back to, I know we talk about mission and vision and values as HR professionals, but I was thinking when you were speaking about my MBA program and a lot of deep dive into the case studies. I personally have never worked for an organization that has been so succinct as some of the cases I studied in that period. But there are some that are out there and they were just, don't be a jerk. Just straightforward. They don't mince any words. I respect that because it takes ambiguity out. It's very in your face. And I feel like back to that branding piece, you almost do a first line scrape of not culture fit talent if you are
Right.
very open about it. If you put out there, don't be a jerk, someone may just, well, that could be me. I'm not going to apply to that job.
Exactly. Yeah.
I can't show up and be a jerk. Okay, I'm going to go look for something else, right? I mean, I think it's powerful because so much of what we talk about in marketing is tied to the business, the product. But marketing for your talent and your culture fit is a very powerful asset as well that can alleviate.
Absolutely, it is. Yes. And that needs to support, like we were saying earlier, that, I did the 20,000 foot level, but that's such a great point, that you're walking the talk, to put it very simply. You say that this is important. That's how you're marketing to your talent. That's who you're hiring. And if somebody isn't working out, there's action that's taken.
Right.
Support it. And I knew somebody too that at their company, they said, we don't tolerate jerks. No jerks can work here. They're very, very clear and blunt about it. And they didn't have any. And if they did, they didn't last very long.
Well, that is the other fact, right? The accountability, the action that needs to be put into motion to free a company from people who do not fit the culture. So I'd love to dive just into one additional topic because you're here and it's a hot topic on everyone's mind, which is pay transparency. This has been long awaited for, I think, all employees. Obviously, there's only key states that have actually put pay transparency laws into effect recently.
Yes.
But it is beginning to change the face of how businesses do handle pay and philosophy conversation, not to be redundant, but transparency in organizations to open up a once very taboo topic and put it on the table and make it okay and adopt that philosophy beyond if states are requiring it, but just as a principle for all roles, all areas, especially as we get into hybrid and remote and hyper dispersed, and it gets really complicated, right? So how has pay transparency impacted your view of the talent market and HR space?
Yeah, that's a great question, and you're right, very hot topic. Especially for me, coming as a compensation professional earlier on in my career, depending on where you worked, government agencies would be different because everything's public there, but don't talk about pay. You got to keep it quiet. Do you publish your pay ranges? All this, that was early on. I don't want to date myself, but early on in my career, a lot of people were, that was what you did. You kind of hid everything. You don't talk about it. Laws have changed, etc. But I think what pay transparency has done, it gives employees a more accurate picture of how much a certain job is getting paid in the marketplace. Whereas before pay transparency, when you have a lack of information, people are going to make up their own, or they're going to go out and find their own data somewhere else. And you don't know where it came from. You don't know if it's vetted. You can't rely on the data necessarily because you don't know where it came from. But pay transparency it's right there in black and white in job ads. You can see how much that job pays. The problem, though, is that you need to be able to communicate to employees and educate them on what pay is, what it includes, and how it's determined. So you're seeing a range with pay transparency. You're seeing a range. It may be the minimum of a pay range. It may be just what they're looking for in these candidates of paying in a certain range. It may include bonus. There's a lot of detail in there. So you need to educate your employees on how you at your organization pay them. Pay is what it includes and how it's determined. So you're seeing a range with pay transparency. You're seeing a range. It may be the minimum of a pay range. It may be just what they're looking for in these candidates of paying in a certain range. It may include bonus. There's a lot of detail in there. So you need to educate your employees on how you at your organization pay them. Got to have a total compensation philosophy. It needs to outline how you pay. What is important? Are you paying at market? What does that mean? So market at the 50th percentile, you're looking at data, you're setting your pay at that market range. You need to explain that to employees. There's a lot of decisions that need to be made there on what you want to do as an organization, what you can afford to do. If you can't afford to pay market, but you're paying below market because maybe you can offer other things, that's fine. Just be clear about that. Be transparent about that, and the why behind it. Educate those employees on what that is. Then they can understand why, okay, we'll just use some simple numbers here, but let's say we're paying $20 an hour you're getting $20 an hour, but hey, manager, I see that this job pays $50, up to $50 an hour. How come I'm not getting $50 an hour? Educate those managers so they can have that conversation too, and explain that, you're early in your career. What we're going to do is, here's a career path, here's a progression, here's, we can train you, etc. And when you get to this point in your career and your knowledge in this role, this is what pay you can get to. And you can also make $50 an hour once you reach these things. So you just have to be very clear and communicate. So set that philosophy, educate people on what that is, and educate your managers, because they're the ones who are going to be having that conversation first with employees. They're going to be the first ones they go to find out the why behind what they're seeing. But I think when you do that and you start to see that information out there, then it removes that mystery, and employees aren't making up their own information because they don't have the information themselves.
Right. I love the education, because I always say, come out of the shadows and into the light. And
Yes.
I understand from a legal standpoint, the pay transparency does look like it comes out of the shadows and into the light. And it does. It does offer a platform and forces like the hand behind the back.
Yes.
However, the education piece is so critical. Also,
Yes.
I would say maybe technical, right? Because a lot of decisions go into the process, and it can be complex, and it's made maybe at a board level, at a senior executive level, where you're weighing out, where do we really fit? Maybe the pay model, the total compensation package is being defined by PE, right? Backed companies. There's not every company has full autonomy in how they're making the decision. And
Correct.
they don't want to lose top talent because they can't offer the same competitive rates that a big attractive company can offer. So you have to kind of put that back to that marketing component. You have to put that whole marketing package together and say, well, this is who we are. This is why we do it this way. This is the value you gain out of this being here and part of this employee experience. And then you have to follow through.
Yes, follow through. That is critical. That's a great point.
And it's hard to convey these difficult messages and know that your managers feel confident to go out and deliver the messages into the tiers of an organization. Do you have any experience of really successful or direly unsuccessful versions of that?
Yes, I do. I have, this actually before pay transparency was a law. which it is in my state, in Washington State. I have done presentations to employee groups on how pay is determined, because a lot of people think you just grab it right out of the air. I'm going to pay you this much. So I went through a whole presentation, a lot of detail in it for employees to show that it's an art and a science. So you've got the data to show what a competitive pay rate is for a job, but there's other things that go into it. For an individual, once you get your pay set for a job, it's based on the job. It's not based on the individual, it's based on the job. And that is a big point that a lot of people don't realize, is how come I'm not, or how come, my person's been here for this many years, they should make a lot more money. Well, an accountant only makes up to this amount of money. It doesn't matter if they've been here 20 years as an accountant. There's only so much money. The pay is only at a certain level. So I kind of equate it to like buying a house. You're not going to necessarily pay $1 million for a $500,000 house. You're going to pay $500,000. So that also how much a company can afford plays into it. So yes, the market rate for this job is this much, but this is what we can afford this year. We've got, we're growing, we're doing all these things, we're investing, whatever the reason is, explain that to people. So if you share that information, share how you determine pay and what is involved in it. I can't tell you how many people came up to me or come up to me after these sessions and thank me for explaining how it works, because it was just such in the shadows, like you're saying, it's a black box. And they were so grateful to know how it was determined. So now that there's pay transparency, that doesn't go away. You still need to do that. And even more so, I think now, is making sure that your managers feel comfortable, because I've had managers who say the worst thing possible to their employees. And a really good, any HR person can tell you this is, well, I would like to pay you more, but HR won't let me. Right? So educating your managers is critical. They, like I said before, the first people that they talk to, so they have got to feel prepared. So I have done sessions with the managers. I call them like communication toolkits, and we try and go through, get all the questions that they have and put it in a place where they can reference it, so that when employees come to them, they feel comfortable and prepared to provide that information to their employees.
Yeah, I love that. I love that toolkit idea, back to the materials, marketing materials that help explain the story. And you're right. If you are not in an HR space, this particular topic is really a black box. Most people do not understand. And now we have the added complication of remote, right? So different salary bands based on location. And you're seeing it more and more being put out there in the job listings, where your salary ranges will be dependent on geographical location. But all of this was in practice, and good practice, before pay transparency. It's just now risen it up to the surface to give space to talk about it, and in fairness, to ask healthy questions. But it's such a primal need to feel that your work is acknowledged, is compensated, and you are being fairly compensated.
Exactly.
Which feeds into DEI practices, and it feeds into, ESG measurements and compliance. I mean, it's a big bucket.
Yes, it feeds into just about everything.
Including engagement.
Engagement.
Well, Andrea, so I want to just take a second to recap our conversation, because obviously this is a topic near and dear to my heart, but with your experience, HR strategy, partnering with business strategy is a key component to really creating HR practices that will feed the health of a company. And secondarily, and this is like the top phrase of my week, which is, I want to say it word for word. I took a note of it. Your culture is what you are willing to tolerate. Did I get that right?
It's the worst you're willing to tolerate. The worst you're willing to tolerate.
I mean, I would like to just ask our audience to sit and canoodle over that for a minute, because it's a powerful statement and it speaks loads to how to change culture and how to transform it, is determining what you are no longer willing to tolerate.
It doesn't matter what you say your culture is or what you want it to be. What it is the worst you're willing to tolerate.
And lastly, pay transparency and compensation, total rewards, really driving culture, driving engagement, and how this newfound space of pay transparency just further motivates why an organization needs to educate their employees, their managers, to have healthy conversations around compensation and really own that strategy, not just throw it over the lane into it's HR's fault. Don't ask me why. I don't know. I mean, I think those are the key takeaways from this conversation, which has been incredibly fruitful. I know that you have your Silver Fern HR consulting. So we didn't prepare for this, but if you want to do a quick plug for those who may be interested in reaching out for your services, take a second.
Absolutely, yes. I help small to mid-sized organizations with their HR needs in a variety of ways. So I am available for projects. But if you're needing help to get some advice or some work around culture, engagement, or if you're needing help just on a fractional or interim basis, please contact Silver Fern HR Consulting and we can help you with all of your HR needs.
Fantastic. Andrea, thank you so much for joining the Culture Chat today, where culture and conversation connect. To our listeners, as always, please subscribe, and we look forward to connecting with you on our next episode. Have a great day.